Meet PitchDB, the ultimate platform for speakers looking to make their mark on podcasts, conferences, and media outlets. PitchDB provides access to over 3 million platforms, ensuring you find the perfect avenue for your message. With AI integrations, your bios and pitches are tailored uniquely to each opportunity, giving you the edge you need. Join now at pitchdb.com.
Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I'm so thrilled to have Andy Neary of Complete Game Consulting on the show today. Andy, you are multi-talented. You're a former pro athlete. You are a current podcaster. You've written a book. You work with insurance professionals to help them figure out how to get in the right mindset and book the right appointments and handle everything in between starting and getting your clients in the door, right? So first of all, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. And I'd love for you to talk about that because I noticed on your LinkedIn, you talk about being a failed professional athlete. And so I want you to talk to us a little bit about what does that mean to you and how did that help your current trajectory?
That's a really good question because I don't share this story all that much except when I'm on stage. So I was a chunky kid. And growing up as a chunky kid, you don't like attention very much. And because a lot of people pick on you and so I think as a kid, I was somebody who always shied away from attention and just wanted to fit in because I didn't feel like I ever fit in. And I bring that up because there was one place I always felt comfortable getting attention and standing out, and that was on the pitcher's mound. And eventually, I grew out of my childhood chubbiness and had a really good high school baseball career, which led to pitching at for the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee here in Wisconsin. And then ultimately, I earned the opportunity to sign a free agent contract with the Milwaukee Brewers, my hometown team. And a lot of people hear that and they go, oh man, that must have been awesome. And it was, right? It was great. But if I'm being honest, I realized I did not live up to my full potential playing pro baseball because I lived in fear.
Wow.
And tying it back to my childhood, when I got to pro ball, I didn't feel like I fit in. Mm-hmm. I was playing with guys who were drafted a lot higher than me, signed for a lot more money than me, and in many ways a lot more talented than me. And so all I tried to do was fit in, and that's why it was easy to overlook me. Mm-hmm. And as a free agent, it's easy to live in fear when you're on the pitcher's mound because every day could be your last day if you don't have a good outing. It's very easy to let go of a free agent because you don't have a lot of money invested in them. And so, I think I just lived in that fear of comparison, judgment, and failure. And ultimately, I would say that's what led to getting cut a couple years into it. And, before I know it, my childhood dream of playing for my hometown team was over.
Wow.
Now, let's take that to business.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, we've all
First 10 years of my career, Annika, in insurance was terrible.
Really?
Because of the same fears.
Oh.
All I wanted to do was fit in. I was so afraid of comparison, the judgment, fear of failing. If I try to sell and I don't do well, what's going to happen? And for the first 10 years, I was a very below average insurance producer. And the moment that changed everything for me was I had actually quit the agency I was working for in 2011, took a step back and went out of the sales production role into an account management role for 3 years. Went to work for my first real mentor I ever had. And then in 2014, Amy and I decided to make a really important life decision. We just moved from Wisconsin to Colorado. And I found myself back in a sales production role in a market nobody knew me. And I had to have that conversation with myself. Are you just going to fit in?
Right.
Or what are you going to do everything you can do to grab attention?
Yeah.
And that's really where today's story started was I realized I have got to do this a different way, but to do it, I have got to get over that fear of judgment, comparison, and failure. And I'm glad to say I have, and that it's really helped grow my insurance business and now my coaching business. And it's because I was able to overcome those fears.
I think the best coaches are people who've had to overcome the same things that they're helping people with. And everything that you said about, I love the way that you weave that in, right? The same doubts that you had, the fears that you had when you're a pro athlete, still, they were the same when you were in the world of business. And I think so many of us face those fears when we moved. I moved back to LA in 2019 from Houston, and I had to kind of I was like, I have to start all over. I used to know a lot more people here, but Now I have to figure out how to navigate again and how to put myself out there. And it can be scary, right? I'm sure it was really scary for you. So I'd love to hear about some of the ways that you helped change your mindset. Did you just start going out and talking to people more? Did you read certain books? Like, what were the tools that helped you?
Yeah, that's a great question. My personal development journey began when I moved out to Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
The first influencer I started following was Darren Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember buying one of his online courses. It was called Insane Productivity. And it was how to get as much as you can done, how to get as much done as you can every single week. A great way to help me build time management skills. But that was there where I realized, man, if I just keep investing in my mind, it's going to help me grow. And I will say, you know, for the audience that's listening in, Annika, that might just be like wondering if they're an entrepreneur. It took me 41 years to finally realize that I could do this. And I will tell you, one of the biggest pivotal moments in my journey happened when I started this business today, Complete Game Consulting. And I remember I had a particularly bad day. Lost a couple clients, lost a big deal where I was hired to coach a group of people and they got acquired, so they had to let go. And I got down to like less than 5 clients. And I remember saying, maybe I'm not destined to do this. Maybe I should just go back and sell insurance. But I remember going up that night and the freedom of knowing that tomorrow I get to get up and do it all over again and nobody gets to tell me how to do it got me so excited when I went to bed. I got back up the next day and was just as excited as I was the morning before. And I realized, okay, if I can get kicked in the teeth and still get up and be excited to do this, I think I can be successful doing this. I can be successful as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Wow. That's what we strive for as entrepreneurs. And I look at my calendar. I need to learn more about time management myself. But today I'm like, it's a Monday and I have a really full day. But I get to have really great conversations and interesting conversations with people that I never would have met otherwise. I get to hear their stories. I get to learn from them. So it's a great day. And my voice will be gone at the end of the day, but that's okay. So I feel everything that you just said. And I'd love to hear about the moment that you pivoted from. So you started working, you took online courses, you became a top salesperson, I'm assuming, in this market where there wasn't a lot of marketing, nobody knew you. What was the pivot like to go from sales into coaching? And at what moment did you decide you would do that?
Well, and here's, if anybody has ever thought about getting in the coaching business, I want to give you something I think that's going to feel really good. I was never the top salesperson, ever. But I found what my gift was. And that was the ability to get attention. And I realized when I was out in a market in Colorado that nobody knew me, I could do it the way I was taught, which was cold calls, pounding the pavement, going door to door, or I could try something different. And different for me was building a personal brand, which nobody did in 2014 in the insurance industry. But it worked. It allowed me to get a lot of attention really quick. People recognize me for, you know, certain things. Then I took it to the next step and I brought public speaking into that model, which allowed me to grow even faster because of the exponential awareness that created. But it was all built around knowing who I'm going after and what the message is.
Right.
I knew who I was the best fit for and who was the best fit for me. And I said, if I just put that message out in front of as many people as I quickly can, I'm going to create activity. And it worked. And so I would tell you that's really where my career shifted from underperforming producer for a decade to becoming a better salesperson because I was making sales easier. I didn't become better at handling objections. I didn't become better at cold call scripts. No, what I became better at was building a brand that people liked. So that by the time I actually connected with them as a prospect, they already liked me.
Yeah.
They already felt like they knew me. And as somebody I'm an introvert by nature, it made sales a lot easier. And that's really where my epiphany occurred was like, wow, this is what brand does. It's a way to make connections with your prospects before you ever walk in the door. In fact, they might come to you.
Absolutely.
And that's when I became a much better sales professional.
Yeah. Well, and that's something I love talking about branding because I always think of it from the perspective of, particularly for individuals, right? You have to really know who you are and what your values are. And if you espouse them and if you live that way every day with whomever you're interacting with, whatever you're writing on LinkedIn or a blog or social media, then you'll attract the right people or the like-minded people who understand your message. But I think a lot of times business owners get caught up in trying to be all things to all people, trying to reach the wrong persona, not realizing that we all pivot at some point once we figure out like, this is what I'm really supposed to be doing or who I'm really supposed to be speaking with. So I love that you're talking about developing your brand. Well,
and you bring up a really important point. You're right. I think a lot of people, a couple of things about being an entrepreneur that people have to understand. I know I did. There is, to keep this with a baseball theme, there's a movie from the 90s or maybe in the 80s now called Field of Dreams.
Yep.
And the famous line is, if you build it, they will come. Well, that's not true in business. Because you built a product doesn't mean people just show up on your door. You're in sales if you own a business. I hate to tell you. If you're an entrepreneur, you're in sales. You better like it. That was my first realization. Like, okay, if this coaching business is going to grow, I've got to tell as many people as I possibly can that we can help. But the second part was the message. Who are we trying to attract? And what really helped me develop a better message was reading a book by the name of Building a Story Brand. And it's a very popular marketing book written by Donald Miller on how to use story in marketing.
Yes.
And that changed my trajectory of like, what am I saying to attract good people? I mean, I've gone on and I'm now a story brand certified guide because I wanted to use their content in our coaching because it works. It's what story are you telling that a prospect can buy into? Well, the easiest story to tell is tell their story. And so what every entrepreneur needs to do to figure out who their ideal prospect is, we use an exercise called the 5-star prospect profile, is answer the following question. Who's your favorite client today? Why? And now answering the question why, you need to break it down 2 ways, demographics and psychographics. Mm-hmm. Demographics is, okay, what age are they? Where are they located? How much money do they make? Whatever those demographics are. But equally, if not more important, is psychographics. Who are these people between the ears? What do they stand for? What do they believe? What do they feel about your product? Because if you go look at your favorite clients, that's why they're your favorite. You're psychographically aligned.
Exactly.
And that's how you use marketing to get inside somebody's head.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to figure out what problem you solve better than anybody else. This is where people get caught. Andy, we solve a lot of problems. I get it. But what's the one you solve better than anybody else? Become known for one thing. What's your process to solve it, which will typically be your product?
Mm-hmm.
And then what result does that process create? If I buy your product, what will my life look like?
Mm-hmm.
And just walking through that exercise helps you craft a better story 100%. About your prospect that should appear on every single piece of your marketing, from your website to a marketing slick to LinkedIn content.
Yes, 100%. I call it the brand blueprint, taking you through your mission, vision, values, purpose to, and then getting to the customer persona and the psychographics and demographics. And there are so many tools that you can use nowadays to crowdsource this information. You can ask questions on social media, or if you have an email list, or, see what people are saying about your competitors. There's so many great ways to find this information out. But I think people, as entrepreneurs, as you said, we have to wear all the hats. We have to be the salesperson. We have to do so many things. I think people sometimes forget when you haven't built out your team yet, that you have to start with the basics. And if you do that and really get that so tight, then everything else will flow so much easier.
I agree. It's interesting. We just hired a marketing director for the first time. And he comes to us with a background in marketing and sales. And it was interesting because my whole mission, my whole goal when I built this coaching company, Annika, was I learned from Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. I've been watching his videos on YouTube since 2018. And I'm like, wait a second, if I turn myself into a media company, I'm going to grow. Like, there's going to be so many people who know I am. I'm going to guilt people into doing business with me, which is what his whole motto is. And it was interesting when Chris, our marketing director, came in recently and started working for us. He said, Andy, do you realize where you started is the deep end for most people, which is using social media content to grow your business? Mm-hmm. Because you guys dove right into the deep end because most people aren't willing to start there. And I realized that's what's allowed us to grow as fast as we probably have in the last 3 years is we have built some, because of that, we are a media company mindset. We have put out so much content that is what is generating all of our activity, all of our leads. And any entrepreneur can do that if they're willing to commit the time.
Right. And that's the thing. We have to stop being distracted by everything else going on and really focus.
Goes back to that time management, right?
100%. 100%. I was doing a personal finance workshop all weekend. And one of the things that struck me is I'm getting text messages for volunteer staff while we're doing this. I'm like, this is not important. This is important. The spreadsheets that I'm working on right now. So how do you turn things off or say no to things to really focus on the right things? So I love what you're talking about and what you're putting forward and how those courses and those people helped you figure out your sweet spot. And that led into a book, into a podcast. So can you talk about those decisions?
Yeah, I'm going to be very honest. People say, you're an author. I say, yeah. However, I only wrote one chapter. I tell people I contributed to a book, but it was a book for the insurance industry. I was a benefit advisor. So it was a book about how to fix health insurance plans in corporate America called Breaking the Status Quo. And the podcast idea came out of, again, watching other people going, they're all doing podcasts. Maybe I should give this thing a try. And so I gave it the name Bullpen Sessions, being a former pitcher. My bullpen session every week was my chance to go in the bullpen and get help from my pitching coach. So I used the podcast, that same mindset of like, this is your chance to come get coaching every week. And yeah, we just pivoted in the last month or a year or so where we've really gone deep, probably speaking mostly to insurance professionals because that's the primary target of our audience, and just teaching very tactical things, interviewing other advisors who are having success on how the mindset and the principles of growing a successful book of business.
Again, you niche down. So you might talk about these principles, but you're talking about them for a very specific audience so you can find the right people.
Oh, yeah. If I could tell your audience one thing, it's this. It's easy to believe that podcasting, video content, having a YouTube channel is going to help you go viral, right? But it's not.
Right.
But if you just use those platforms to target your ideal prospect, what it allows you to do is get one message in front of a lot of people at one time. So my best piece of advice I could get anybody who's trying to grow their business today is, what are you doing to get your message out far, fast, and wide? What are you doing with social media content? What are you doing with webinars and workshops? What are you doing with a podcast? What are you doing with public speaking? These are all channels that allow you to get one message in front of a lot of people at one time. And that is how you grow a business faster today. Because here's the deal. No matter who you're targeting today, everybody's attention's in one place. And that's this thing on this phone right here I'm holding. When I got in the insurance business, 20 years ago, I was given two pieces of advice. First one was dye your hair gray so you look older. That didn't work very well. The second one was go get a membership at a country club you can't afford because that's where the CEOs are now. Your buyers are on this phone. Their attention is on this phone. What are you doing right now to get their attention in here? Because here's the other thing. No matter what business you sell, B2B, B2C, your prospects are going to look you up before they hire you.
100%.
And my question is, what are they going to find?
Exactly.
And if what they find makes them feel confident to hire you, you're going to win the business. And so that's our mission is, this is the modern day country club in my hand. You've got to be there to get people's attention.
Preaching to the choir right here. It drives me crazy when people think that they are ready to put their name out there, but their website doesn't have the right logos, right? Or it's not easy to navigate. They don't have a call to action for their product or service, and it doesn't match what they're putting on social media. They're not actually engaging with people on social media. They're just posting, but they're not responding to comments or DMs or, going on to other people's accounts and liking what they're saying to do building that rapport. So, yeah.
Yes. No, and here's the fun part about this, to your point, just be transparent with your audience. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they never put their business out there because they're waiting until it's perfect.
Right. Oh.
I had a conversation last week with Chris, our marketing director, because he's new. He's trying to prove himself and he's, nervous that he's going to mess up. I said, listen, we break things every week here. We put stuff out that's terrible. We put out a post that the link gets broken. I said, it's going to happen, but you've got to put yourself out there.
Right.
And if you're authentic about how you do it, your audience is always going to forgive you if you screw something up. And so I think that was the relief for me, is if I'm not trying to pull something fast over you, or I'm not just here to try to grow revenue as quickly as I can, and you're just another number to me, if I'm authentic and I'm actually trying to help you, you can't ever screw up. Your audience is always going to forgive you. But what I know for sure is you'll never get out there if you're waiting to be perfect.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to you talking about being an introvert, not wanting the attention. And now you're in a place where you're getting attention. You have a podcast, you're putting yourself out there. Was that transition difficult for you to make as an introvert? Do you find that you have to take time? Because I'm an extrovert, but I still have to have time to decompress. That's alone time.
Mm-hmm. Great question. Fortunately, it's never been hard. I've always liked the microphone. But I will tell you, as an introvert, it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
I think that energy hits you harder than maybe an extrovert. And so when I speak, I love speaking on stage. But however, when that talk's over, there is nowhere else I'd rather be than in the hotel room by myself. And so, I would say for people who have that fear of putting themselves, maybe it's on camera because they're an introvert, the best piece of advice I can give them is just imagine you're talking to one of your prospects. And I think that's one of the biggest fears people have, especially with things like video content. Mm-hmm. They have this fear that I'm hitting record and thousands of people are watching. When the reality is, if you just hit record and act as if you're speaking to one, it's easier and you are going to be more confident. And I think to help people with content, especially video content, a little tip for an introvert, start with longer content. Don't start with short clips, because here's what happens. If you want to do a short clip, that's where you're going to try to be perfect for 55 seconds, and then you're going to do 25 takes. Literally just hit record and just start having a conversation with the camera as if you're teaching a prospect something, and let it go for 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, who cares? And then start recording that content. That's going to be a lot easier for an introvert than trying to hit record, saying something perfect for 45, 55 seconds. It's a lot easier.
I say the same thing about podcasting, because I was actually talking to my boyfriend about this yesterday. And he's like, well, I don't know if I want to talk to like thousands of people, just like you said. And I said, well, you don't think about it. It's a one-to-one conversation. That's why people listen to certain podcasts, because we're developing a rapport. We're having a relationship here where we're just having a conversation. And yes, lots of people are going to listen to it, but they're not here right now in the room with us. So we can just be us. We can just have an authentic discourse.
It's a great way to think about it. Really, if you think about a podcast, right? I'm literally on a microphone right now in my office having a conversation with one person.
Yeah.
And if you're doing a solo episode, you're literally in your office having a conversation by yourself.
Right.
and I think it's easier said than done. I get it. But at the same time, that is what it is. Mm-hmm. You're just having a conversation. And what I love about the podcast concept too, to your point, is because it's longer form content, you can slow down, you can pause, you can tell stories, right? Again, you're not trying to fill as much as you can in 1 minute. It's take your time and slow down. And I think for people who are trying to create more content, that's why it's more effective to start with longer form content, in my opinion, because it's going to be easier to get your point across than trying to be perfect for 60 or 120 seconds.
100%. I know one of your specialties when you work as a coach is helping people learn how to effectively use LinkedIn. What are some things that you see people do wrong on LinkedIn?
I was on a podcast this morning on the same topic, so I get fired up about this. So
you're all ready.
What do they do wrong? First and foremost, LinkedIn is an awareness platform, not a sales platform. Mm-hmm. Your job is to create awareness, not sales. What does that mean? Well, you can build connections on LinkedIn, right? But when they accept, you should not turn around and ask them for coffee. That's a sales pitch. They don't want that. The second thing is getting caught up in the likes and the comments. I like to say the likes and the comments don't pay your bills. Right. Don't get caught up on who's liking, who's commenting, because here's the reality. Mm-hmm. Your prospects that are watching will never comment or like, but they're watching.
Yes.
And that's all that matters. And then the third mistake I see a lot of advisors in our industry make, for sure, is thinking that content's going to do the magic. Like, all I got to do is create content, and then all of a sudden I'm going to get all these inbound leads. No, that's not how it works. If a piece of content lands in somebody's feed on the right day, yes, it could happen. However, you still have to put in the work with messaging, to creating engagement, and then turning connections into conversations. And so when we teach our strategy, we call it the LinkedIn Diamond Playbook. It's about 4 things. Is your profile prospect friendly?
No.
Can a prospect come to your profile and say, I think they could help me? Are you creating connections on a consistent basis with your target audience, not just anyone?
Exactly.
Are you posting content consistently? And my advice is it's got to be at least weekly. And is that content directed at your target prospect? And then are you doing in the work in the DMs to try to engage ideal prospects to turn the connection into an offline conversation? If you do those 4 things consistently, you will create activity on LinkedIn, but you got to go at it from the standpoint that it's an awareness platform, not a sales platform. And here's the last tip. If you stay consistent, especially with the content stuff, and you have a prospect who is considering hiring you, and they Google you, which they will, your LinkedIn profile is going to be one of the first things that pops up. They'll go look at it. And if they see a consistent brand, a consistent message, that will help build the credibility you need for them to say yes.
Mm-hmm. You just hit one of my biggest pet peeves about LinkedIn is when, particularly people in, I think, finance and insurance, if you have a new job that pops up or anything on your profile, they reach out. Would you like to roll over your 401k? Or do you need to talk about retirement? Or do you need to do insurance? And I'm like, this is not the way to approach me. I want to have a conversation. I want to get to know somebody And exactly what you're saying, it's awareness building. It's a relationship that you're building. If you do that, I might accept your request. And then once you do that, I'm going to be like, no, thanks. And I'll still keep you as a connection, but I'm not going to take you seriously when I am looking for those services as somebody who wants to offer value, right?
Well, think about this. We are more skeptical that we sniff out sales pitches faster than we ever have.
Yeah, because we're inundated by so many every day.
Yeah, we're skeptical of everything now, right? And so one of the tips I'd give people listening in is what we still use today. It's amazing that the voice note feature has been on LinkedIn for almost 3 years now, and most people still don't know it's there. And so if somebody accepts my connection, I will send them a voice message that says, hey, thank you for accepting the connection. If you need anything, feel free to reach out now that we're connected. I put a lot of content on LinkedIn. I hope you can use it. Other than that, just want to say thanks.
Nice.
No sales pitch. At least half of those get a return message saying, holy cow, I didn't know you could send a message like that. That's really cool. Well, guess what? You just made a really good first impression.
Definitely.
And you didn't ask for anything.
Yeah.
Now you got to let the content do the talking for a little bit. This is where the new game in sales is patience. You got to be a little patient because the more value you bring in the content, the more right you will have to ask for the meeting.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Now, let's talk about your program, your coaching. Is this one-on-one? Is this group coaching? Is it a mix? And it's primarily for insurance professionals at this point, right?
Yeah, it is because that's our background. But I will tell you, the frameworks we teach apply to whether you're selling, I always say insurance or hot tubs. It could help you. How we work, I actually am trying to get away from the word coaching, if I'm being honest with you. We're very much into strategy, almost more consulting than coaching. Mm-hmm. But what we're helping people do is build credibility and trust with their prospects before they walk in the door. We're not sales coaching. I don't really view us as sales training. It's what are you doing to get your prospects' attention? If you are a producer selling insurance, the truth is not enough people know you exist. If you're a brick and mortar business selling cookies, truth is not enough people know you exist. So what are you doing to build likability and credibility via content and building an online presence? Because the bigger your online presence, the more credibility you're going to have. And when people come to look you up to make that decision, it's going to make it easy for them to make that decision. So that's really what we're focused on, is helping companies, helping sales professionals build an online presence that turns reach and relevancy into revenue.
Love it. That was a really great, succinct elevator pitch. Thank you.
Thank you. They're working on that one.
And what do you think has been the biggest change beyond moving, creating your own brand, realizing that you're really good at consulting for other people on this, starting your podcast? Is there one thing that we haven't talked about that you think is that turning point that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I'll share this story if I can. So when I started growing this business, it started as a side hustle in 2019 and then really became my full business in 2021. Late 2020, early 2021, we made the decision. I got a text message. At that point, again, I went all in on this media concept, right? I'm a media company. Truth be told, I didn't know if anybody was paying attention, if anybody cared, if anybody listened. I get a text message from a peer of mine early 2021 and said, hey, man, we jump on a Zoom call. Love to connect. Sure. A couple days later, we connect. Now, I thought we were just connecting, but that wasn't the case. He got on and he said, hey, man, I just want to thank you. And I was on the other end of the screen going, like, thank me. I haven't seen you in a couple of years. What have I done? He proceeds to tell me that over the previous 24 months, he had gone through a nasty divorce, actually dealt with a very, very serious bout of COVID, hospitalized, touch and go.
Oh, my gosh.
And had gotten to a point where he thought about ending it all. And he got on Zoom to just thank me because he said, I got to tell you, man, your content kept me going. And I wanted to thank you because your content kept me here. And I will tell you, when I heard that, like first the wind was knocked out of me.
Yeah.
But what I realized from that moment forward was, yes, content can help me grow a business. It can help me increase my revenue, but that's not the point. When you create content for your business, you never know who you're impacting. And if you just make it your goal to create impact through your content, impact will lead to income. And I think until that point, I had made it all about me. How do I get attention? What can I do, right? And then I realized it has nothing to do with me. Now, my view of content is much more different today. I view it as an obligation to help other people. And it'll ultimately lead to business, but it's really to help other people. And that conversation with him changed my perspective. So if anybody is listening in with doubts about putting themselves out there, don't make it about you. Make it about the people you can impact.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And I'm speechless.
I was too, sitting on that Zoom screen.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you bet.
I think that's something
I don't share that a whole lot, but it was definitely a moment that changed the trajectory of this business. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's part of what we get caught up to. People are afraid to put themselves out there because we are our own worst critics.
Yes.
But it's not about us. It's about what we can add to the world, right? What lessons
100%.
can we gone through that we can share so that somebody
100%.
else can learn from it or be inspired or not repeat that mistake or whatever the case may be, or just get a laugh, right? Yeah. I'm really excited to see your next phase. You're doing a little bit of rebranding, pivoting right now.
I shouldn't say rebranding, repivoting. Right. Yeah, we're in the middle of redoing our website, building out some new marketing strategies. But at the end of the day, it comes back to helping sales professionals build a business they're proud of. And it's doing so by grabbing attention. It's a game of attention today. And if you're not getting it, somebody else is. And so, yeah, the day's coming. We'll probably definitely expand outside the insurance industry and help more sales professionals. But yeah, that's the name of the game. If you're sitting here listening to this podcast right now, having that doubt of putting yourself out there, just remember, it's not about you. It's about impacting others. And the reality is, if you're not going to get attention, your competitor is.
Exactly.
And so you've got to put yourself out there so more people know you exist.
Well, I'm sure you have many, but do you have a favorite quote or mantra, family motto, or some words that just really help you get through each day?
I will tell you, it's mine probably change every week or every month, but the one that I'm really thinking about right now is one I heard from somebody I follow, Jesse Itzler. Bigger isn't better, better is better. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs need to hear that. Bigger isn't better, better is better. We get so focused on scale and growth when the truth is we need to make our product better. And if you constantly focus on making your product better, your business will grow. And we're at that point right now. We've scaled pretty well, but I'll admit we haven't focused enough time on how do we make our products better. So literally, as this podcast is being recorded, as a team, we're going, let's slow down for a second and go, we've got some great products. How do we make them better? Mm-hmm. So bigger is not better, better is better.
Fantastic. I couldn't say it better myself. So Andy Neary from Complete Game Consulting, CompleteGameConsulting.com. And you can also find Andy on LinkedIn to reach out and learn more. Follow his content because you'll learn a lot of great tips and tricks in that space. Any final words, Andy, that you want to leave us with?
Take it from the fat kid and an introvert. You got to grab attention. Don't be afraid to. I told you about how my early childhood and my baseball career was filled with fear of comparison, judgment, and failure. You're going to have the fears. You're going to fear what people will say. You're going to you're going to compare yourself to everybody else. You just have one job. Use content to speak to your prospects. And guess what? Yes, you're going to fail. You're going to record that first video and it's going to suck. But you got to keep doing it. And your business requires it. And whether you like it or not as an entrepreneur, you are the best salesperson you have. And so just leave it all on the field and let people know you exist. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I enjoyed the stories that you shared with us from your own life and your own journey. And I definitely feel very impacted that some of them that you shared aren't things that you necessarily usually share on podcasts. So I appreciate that. I know that my audience appreciates it.
You made it easy. Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody who's watching or listening to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. I'm Annika Jackson, and I'll be back again with another amazing guest very shortly to share their tips, tricks, and their journey to entrepreneurship with you. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.